Hey, it's really good to see you guys because this video has been a long time coming. I've been getting requests to share our whole feeding journey, the breastfeeding, the pumping, the formula from start to finish. However, I wanted to wait until I was officially done nursing and done pumping, and now that Milo is 100% formula fed with our Bobbie formula, it's time to dive in. Thank you so much to Bobbie for sponsoring today's video. We love you so much. Well, actually, I've never tasted you. Milo loves you so much. But I'm just so excited to share our whole feeding journey with you from the day Milo was born up until now, where he's just about 1 year old. And I'm in the kitchen right now because I was just about to make a bottle for Milo, but I'll get to that in a bit. First, I want to go back to the breastfeeding days. When I was pregnant, I always knew that breastfeeding was something that I at least wanted to try. My boobs actually started leaking a little bit of colostrum when I was about 19 to 20 weeks pregnant, so I could tell that my body was getting started with the milk production. However, you still don't really know if the milk is going to come in for you until you give birth and you see if it comes in or not. Spoiler alert, and if you followed any of my videos, you probably already know this, but my milk supply did come in, and it came in rather strongly. It came in so robustly, in fact, that I was actually able to donate some of my milk to the NICU, and I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity. But of course, before Milo was born, even though I was leaking, I still didn't really know what the journey was gonna look like for us at all. But one thing I did know was that before Milo came, I wanted to make sure that I had some formula on hand at home just to have just in case. I was also told by a couple of friends that I should bring my own formula, whatever formula I felt comfortable with, to the hospital, so that in the hospital, if they recommended that we give him formula, I could sort of hand them the bottle that I felt comfortable with, and I could tell them, give him this. So now the question, of course, was, what formula do we feel comfortable with? So the first thing I did was I asked a few close friends of mine that had babies before me what formula they recommended. And this is when I sort of fell down the infant formula rabbit hole. Overwhelmingly across the board, I got recommended that we use Bobbie formula. But I didn't know anything about Bobbie. I had never heard of various infant formula brands before, so I just decided to do my own online research. If you're not familiar with the infant formula space, I'll just tell you that there is a lot of chatter and a lot of talk about these European formulas. My understanding is that the EU regulations are a little bit more prescriptive when it comes to what ingredients can actually be in the formulas. Because of this, a lot of US people try to source these European formulas. However, they're getting formulas that are not regulated by the FDA. And that just kind of freaked me out a little bit. I didn't feel comfortable giving Milo something to drink that was not at least reviewed by the FDA. So that is why Bobbie was incredibly appealing to me, because Bobbie is the first and only European style formula that is manufactured and sold in the US. And on top of that, it has been reviewed by the FDA and it meets all of their requirements for infant formula. Personally, I did a ton of research, and at the end of the day, we were choosing between Bobbie and Similac Advance. And I'll tell you why we wound up going with Bobbie. First of all, Bobbie is organic and non-GMO, whereas Similac Advance is neither of those things. There was one department that they both checked the boxes for, so both of them were lactose-based and both contained DHA and ARA. And those are both fatty acids that are present in breast milk. But I compared their whey to casein ratios, and Bobbie's is 60 to 40, whereas I think the Similac Advance was 48 to 52. And the Bobbie 60 to 40 ratio is closest to the ratio in breast milk. Another reason we went with Bobbie is that it's a subscription model, so it's very easy to order and make sure you always have formula on hand. Something that has changed since we first started using Bobbie is that it is now available in over 1,700 Target stores. I did a Q&A on my Instagram so I could source questions for this video, and a couple questions were about when we first introduced formula to Milo. And the answer is the day he was born. So in the hospital, Michael and I were able to send Milo off to the hospital's nursery so that we could get some rest in our room. So although he was latching and trying to drink on me, and I was at that point learning to pump, and I was working with lactation consultants to get that process started, my milk hadn't really come in yet. So I do think the nursery made him a couple of ounces of formula, and they were just feeding him little sips here and there. Now, when we got home from the hospital, you might remember we had a nurse that lived with us for the first month of Milo's life. If you want to learn more about our nurse situation, I did an entire Q&A on my Instagram stories. I introduced you to our nurse, who we absolutely loved, and I just share all of the details. I was really transparent about that whole thing on Instagram, and I was so grateful that we had Maddie with us because she taught us literally everything we know. For that first month, Milo was primarily feeding on me and nursing with me during the day, but one of the perks of having a nurse there overnight is that we would send Milo into his nursery with the nurse at night. Michael and I could stay in our room and try to get as much sleep as possible. I, of course, was still waking up every couple of hours because I was feeling my milk coming in and I needed to keep pumping every few hours. But our nurse was actually giving Milo little bits of formula overnight. Although I was starting to pump and build up somewhat of a supply, I did personally want to give Milo a little bit of formula in the beginning because I wanted to get him used to drinking both breast milk and formula. I didn't know how long I planned to breastfeed for, I didn't know how long it was gonna last, and I wanted to make sure that he took formula easily. I also wanted to introduce a bottle relatively early because I wanted to make sure he was comfortable drinking from the boob, the bottle, whatever. He never really showed us any signs of preferring one over the other. I think he just loved food so much that no matter what we offered him, milk or formula, he just took it. I really understand the fear that people can have in those early days of giving your baby something from a can or a bottle. They're so tiny, they're so vulnerable, you just don't know that the quality is up to the standards you want it to be. So that's something we loved about Bobbie. They undergo 2,000 quality checks to make sure that the formula is safe and nutritious for babies. It's also the first ever infant formula to receive both the Clean Label Project Purity Award and a certification as a pesticide-free product, so all good things. In terms of scheduling, so when he was first born, he was just drinking on demand. If he was sleeping for longer than 3 hours, we would wake him up and he was just kind of drinking all day. And throughout the entire day, I would be nursing him. And then at night, when he was in the nursery, he would either have some Bobbie formula, or if my milk was pumped and it was accessible, our nurse would heat some of that up. And so she was kind of going back and forth at night, giving him a little formula and a little breast milk, but also on demand, of course. And he was waking up every probably 1 to 3 hours overnight. Our nurse left us at 4 weeks. So from 4 weeks to 8 weeks, Michael and I were just kind of on our own, figuring it all out. And then around 8 weeks is when we decided to, as per our pediatrician's recommendation, switch him onto a feeding schedule of eating every 4 hours, 4 times a day. And that's just the daytime. Of course, the nighttime continued to be on-demand feeding. In terms of ounces, we were told that he should be taking in at least 24 ounces of milk in 24 hours. And so if you kind of divide out the 24 ounces by the number of feeds he had in a day, that's about how much we were giving him at each feed. But keep in mind, all of those 4 daytime feeds, I was nursing him, so there's no real way for me to know exactly how many ounces he was taking. The only way I could really know how many ounces he was getting at those feeds is the fact that when I would pump in place of those feeds, I would usually get about 6 to 8 ounces out. So I assume he was taking between 6 and 8 ounces at each of those feeds. And then he was still feeding on demand at night. And if he ever showed signs of wanting more milk, we would offer him a bottle after a feed. All right, now we're at 12 weeks. So around 12 weeks is when Milo dropped all of his nighttime feedings. I'm not gonna get into all the sleep stuff. That's a conversation for another video. I do have another Instagram story highlight if you wanna go read about our sleep journey. But at about 12 weeks, that's when he stopped naturally waking up for his nighttime feeds. So at that point, he was getting 4 feeds during the day, and usually it was 7 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m., and 7 p.m. Most of these feeds were me nursing. However, if I ever wasn't available and we offered him a bottle, we were usually giving him between 6 to 8 ounces, and that is how much he would take at each of those 4 feeds. Side note, a lot of people were asking about my middle of the night pump and when I personally dropped my middle of the night pump. So as I said, at 3 months, 12 weeks, that's when Milo stopped waking up at night. But I actually continued waking up at night to pump in the middle of the night until he was about 6 months old. And at 6 months old, I had a friend who told me that I need to just slowly wean myself off that middle of the night pump if I want my body to stop producing milk at that time. So it definitely took a little bit of time, but basically what I would do is when I woke up, I would slowly shorten the amount of time that I was pumping for until I got to a point where like I woke up in the middle of the night and was pumping for 30 seconds. And then eventually I was able to phase that middle of the night pump out, and that was a life-changing moment for me because I finally got to sleep through the night when Milo had been sleeping through the night since he was 12 weeks old. Also, if we go back to the 12-week mark, around 3 months, that is when we first hired our nanny. And our nanny, as you probably know, comes 3 days a week, and she's there for those full 3 work days. So what I was doing back when I was pumping is during those work days, I was kind of set on not nursing Milo during the day. The point of us having the nanny there was that she was watching him while I was able to fully dive into work. So what I would do is at those 2 points during the day when our nanny was here, the 11 a.m. and the 3 p.m., and I normally would be feeding Milo, I would just put on my pump and keep working at the computer and just be pumping while I worked. And during those times, she would feed him with a bottle. And she at this point was pulling from my supply that I had stashed from those middle of the night pumps that I had really stashed a big supply from. So that went on from about when Milo was 3 months old to about when he was 7 months old. And throughout that time, our nanny would be going into the freezer or the fridge, pulling out the pumped milk, giving him bottles of that, and at the same time, I was pumping and adding back to the supply. So I was just constantly replenishing our fridge and freezer stash. When Milo was around 7 months old, I woke up in the middle of the night one night, so keep in mind I was now about a month into not doing my middle of the night pump. And I woke up one night and I felt a really painful lump in the side of my boob. I identified it as an early sign of potentially getting mastitis, and I went into the shower. I was combing it out with a comb and putting warm water and warm compresses on it. I took some sunflower lecithin, which I've heard can help ease clogged ducts. I took some ibuprofen because I was getting a headache, and then I went back to bed. And when I woke up a few hours later, I had a full-blown fever and I definitely had mastitis. It was not fun. It was pretty scary, and basically one whole side was not really expressing milk. I could tell I had a clogged duct. I called my OBGYN and she immediately told me that I definitely had mastitis, and she gave me a prescription for an antibiotic. I took it right away. I have to say it worked right away. So within 24 hours of that, the pain was gone and everything was kind of flowing like normal. But that bout of mastitis definitely dipped my supply a little bit. It was nothing major, just like a little hit, but I think I was able to get my supply back to a normal place. But then the thing that really hit my supply again is when I decided that I wanted to cut out one of my feeds. So basically, I decided that, you know, at this point, my body was expressing milk at 7 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. and I was also pumping myself one more time around 9 or 10 p.m. before I went to bed. And I decided that I wanted to cut out the 11 a.m. session, meaning on days that I was with Milo, I wasn't going to nurse him at that time. Instead, I was going to give him a bottle. And meaning on days when our nanny was here and she was giving him a bottle, I just wasn't going to pump at that time. And so I slowly weaned myself off that 11 a.m. feed just by pumping and pumping for fewer and fewer minutes until eventually I just skipped over that pump session altogether. And that was the first time that I noticed my supply across the board definitely was dipping a little bit. But it was really important to me to cut out that pump time because if I'm being really honest, as a mom who had a full-time job, it was really, really difficult for me to have my nanny here 3 days a week, but still need to pause my workday 2 times to pump. Being a pumping mom, for me at least, meant that I had very little flexibility in my work days. Even the days, you know, even days I had our nanny here, I felt like I couldn't go anywhere. It was really difficult for me to be on the go and go shoot things out and about because I always needed to pause at these 2 times to pump. Even though it seems like not a big deal because I had these portable pumps, it still was a lot of work, and then you have to store the milk and label it, and if I was on the go, I would have to bring freezer bags. I was kind of building my whole life schedule around pumping. So I sort of wanted to get to a place that I have seen other mothers at where they were able to breastfeed their baby at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. but then not express milk any other time in the day. And I thought that seemed like the ideal place to be, where you were kind of just nursing your baby morning and night, still giving them that breast milk, only had to do it twice a day, and then all night you could sleep and all day you could do whatever you wanted. That felt like magical to me. I knew that my next step, if I wanted to get to that, was to cut out the 3 p.m. session also, because then I would basically be going from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. and not pumping in between. So I weaned myself off that 3 p.m. feed as well, and that is really where my supply took the biggest hit. Now at this point I knew that I needed to make a choice because I could have gone in one of two directions. At this point I could have said, wow, my supply is dipping, time to start power pumping. Time to show my body that the baby's still here. Let me add these pump sessions back in and really get my supply back, because I'm confident I would have been able to get my milk supply back if I really wanted to. Then the other part of me was thinking, this might be a good time to just start weaning altogether. You are already getting a taste of what life would be like if you didn't have to pump all day, and you're really loving that. And you know, you've already been giving this kid breast milk for 8 or 9 months. He seems to really enjoy when you give him formula, and you found a formula brand that you trust, so it's time to just wean. And I decided to go in that direction. I understand not everyone would make that same decision, and I understand that some people might find that to be a selfish decision. Personally, I felt like it allowed me to do a bit of a better job in my role as a mom, because I wasn't quite as depleted all the time from needing to work my entire day schedule around this feeding schedule. Before that, I had arbitrarily said that I wanted to try to breastfeed him for 1 year, and at this point I was at the 9-month mark, but I just knew it was time. Actually, at this point, the fact that I had cut out those 2 middle of the day pumps had caused such a dip in my supply across the board that even in the morning and the evening when I was nursing Milo, the milk just was not flowing like it was before. And I think that was a little frustrating for him because he was used to getting on the boob and then having a very big letdown, and that wasn't happening anymore. So he was actually starting to look around for the bottle, and he was actually starting to prefer the bottle a lot more. So I felt really good about ending our breastfeeding journey at 9 months, and at that point I just slowly weaned myself off of the other few pump sessions in the day, focusing on one at a time and just by slowly cutting out the amount of minutes that I was pumping for. Now we are at a place where Milo is 100% formula fed, so the milk that we had stashed away in the freezer went very quickly. It probably only took 3 weeks for us to run out of all the milk we had, and now all of our milk is gone and Milo 100% drinks Bobbie. Here's where this all started. I was just about to make a bottle of Bobbie. Here's a clean bottle. Milo has actually preferred a cold bottle since the summertime. We tried giving him warm milk in the summer and he was not having it, so we've actually been in cold ever since, and I think he likes it more. So I'm about to make a 6-ounce bottle. So we just pour this right from our filter to the 6-ounce line. Perfect. It comes with this very easy scoop, and you kind of just like swipe it along the edge to scrape it off like that. And it's 2 ounces of water to 1 scoop of formula. So for a 6-ounce bottle of water, you're gonna add 3 scoops. 1, 2, 3. Now I cap it, shake it, and I'm just gonna store this in the fridge for his next feed. We've been teaching Milo the sign for milk, and now whenever he's drinking his bottle, he holds it with one hand and the other hand he just goes like this. And he also knows the word milk so much that now we can't even say the word without him getting so excited. We also can't say the word bottle, so we've started saying B, but I think he now knows what B means, so anytime we say anything like that, he starts going like this. Let me pop this in the fridge. There are a couple questions here about what our plan is for the future with Milo. He is turning 1 November 21st, and at that point we're gonna have his 1-year checkup with the pediatrician and see what the next steps are. My understanding is that you give formula until a year, and then I think they recommend that you switch to some form of regular milk. We still haven't figured out exactly what we're transitioning to, but for right now, he's still 100% on formula. I have a couple questions here about how Milo's bottle habits changed once we introduced solids. And what I will say is at 4 months, we introduced some purees and baby oatmeal, and then at 6 months, we introduced real solid food. Right now, we offer him at his 4 feeds a day, 8 ounces, 6 ounces, 6 ounces, and 8 ounces. And because he also has 2 meals scattered in there, he doesn't necessarily finish the bottle every single time. And I think our pediatrician is probably going to tell us to start cutting back on how many ounces of formula we're offering or how many ounces of milk we're offering eventually, because he's going to start adding another meal every day and he's just going to start eating more solids. But my understanding is that before the baby is a year old, their primary form of nutrition is coming from the formula or the breast milk. Even though you might be adding solids in there, it's still important for them to get a certain amount of the milk or formula. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope it answered your questions. For any parents out there who are curious about Bobbie and who maybe want to give it a try but aren't ready to commit to the subscription, I'm going to link for you down below the Bobbie starter bundle. So the link is going to give you a bundle deal on 2 cans of Bobbie that you can get to either use immediately or just keep on hand. If you have a baby that is exclusively drinking formula, the bundle is good for about 1 week of formula if you're giving a baby about 32 ounces a day. But if you're just supplementing with formula, it will last you a little bit longer than that. And keep in mind, it could take babies between 5 to 7 days to adjust to a new formula if you are switching from something else. And then if Bobbie does work for your baby, you should definitely sign up for their subscription. We've loved them so much, and I'm really grateful to share them with you all today. And thank you so much for coming back to our channel. I really love sharing as much of this journey with you as possible. I have to say, it was a little difficult to do this video because even though I just went through this process this year, I feel like everything goes in and out. There's so much knowledge and information and different topics that come along with having a baby that as soon as you're out of a phase, you just forget what happened, even though like a month before you were deep in it and felt like you knew everything. So I hope I captured everything, but if I missed anything, let me know. I'll go back. I did keep some notes on my phone, so it's always good to reference them. I love you all, sending you guys so much love. Thank you for following along on my journey, and I'll see you next time. Bye.